Before we begin, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from in the comments. These stories travel farther than we ever imagine, and your support keeps them alive. Now, back to the story. The park didn't feel like a park that day. Not really. It felt like a place where people pretended life was normal. Joggers moved past with headphones on, eyes locked forward, as if focus could protect them from everything that had happened in the last few years. Parents pushed strollers and scrolled their phones. Couples sat on benches talking about dinner, work, rent, weekend plans, small things they could control. But at the edge of the walkway, where the pavement met the grass, sat something that didn't belong to ordinary life. A German shepherd, large, older, still powerful, but the kind of powerful that came from discipline, not youth. His muzzle was beginning to gray. His coat had lost some shine. His posture remained perfect. Straight spine, forward-facing chest, paws positioned evenly as if he was still waiting for a handler's next command. He wore no vest, no badge, no harness that said police, only a worn collar, cracked with age and softened by time. A tag clinked when he shifted his head, small, dull metal against leather. Most people would have assumed he was lost, but anyone who had ever worked law enforcement knew better. This was a retired K9, and his name, engraved faintly on the tag, was Ranger. Ranger didn't beg for attention. He didn't approach strangers. He didn't wag his tail at passing children. He didn't bark at skateboards or chase squirrels. He simply sat, waiting, not for a treat, not for affection, for something far heavier, for someone. A man in plain clothes stood near the pathway, watching from a distance. His name was Daniel Cross. He wasn't in uniform anymore either, but the way he stood gave him away. Hands still, eyes scanning. The posture of someone who had spent too many years watching for sudden movement. He hadn't planned to be here. But in the past month, Daniel had discovered grief made you do strange things, like driving to the same park every day at the same hour, standing 10 feet away from a dog who barely looked at you, simply because you didn't know what else to do with your hands. Daniel wasn't Ranger's handler. He never had been. Ranger's handler was Officer Daniel Hayes, a man who had once been considered the best K9 officer in the precinct. Quiet, reliable, the kind of cop others trusted when things went bad. And now Hayes was gone. 6 months gone, and Ranger somehow looked like he still hadn't accepted it. After Hayes died, Ranger had stopped doing everything dogs are supposed to do when they're safe. He didn't play. He didn't relax. He didn't seek affection. He didn't even sleep deeply. He simply existed, as if he was waiting for the world to rewind to the moment before it broke. The department retired him quickly. Too quickly. Officially, it was for the dog's health. Unofficially, officers didn't know what to do with a K9 who refused to leave the spot where his partner had last stood alive. So they transferred paperwork, signed forms, and called it a retirement. But Ranger didn't retire. He just lost his purpose. And purpose, for a K9, is everything. That afternoon, Daniel Cross was staring at Ranger again, wondering the same question he had wondered every day since he'd been assigned to temporarily oversee the dog until a permanent placement could be approved. What do I do with a hero who doesn't want to live anymore? Ranger's eyes were open, fixed on the open path, not tired, not sleepy, waiting. Then Daniel heard the sound of rushing footsteps, small feet pounding on pavement. He turned. A little girl had pulled free from her mother's hand. She couldn't have been older than 6. Her jacket was thin for the weather. The sleeves swallowed her hands. Her hair was loosely tied back, with strands escaping and sticking to her cheeks in the wind. She moved quickly, but not recklessly, like she had made up her mind. Daniel's first instinct was to step in, but the closest officer did it first. "Hey!" Sergeant Miles Grant shouted. "Don't touch him." The words echoed sharper than intended, slicing through the park's casual noise. The girl froze mid-step. She didn't look scared. She looked confused, like she couldn't understand why a simple moment had become dangerous. Ranger lifted his head, slowly, deliberately. His ears rose slightly. His gaze locked onto the child, and Daniel's breath caught in his throat. Because Ranger didn't do that, not anymore. Since Hayes died, Ranger had been like a statue around strangers. He had ignored people like they didn't exist. Yet now, he was looking at the child like she mattered. The girl swallowed. Then she did something no adult expected. She didn't move closer. She didn't reach out. She didn't run away. She spoke. Her voice was quiet enough that only those closest heard it. "Can I sit here?" Miles blinked. "No, sweetheart. "I won't touch him," she added quickly, almost pleading. "I just want to sit." The child's mother hurried forward, face flushed. "Emma," she hissed, "come back right now." Daniel noticed something then. Emma didn't flinch at her mother's anger. She flinched at her mother's grip. Not the volume, not the words, the touch. As her mother's fingers tightened around her wrist, Emma's shoulders lifted slightly, like her body remembered being pulled too hard. Ranger noticed it too. His nose lifted. His posture shifted. One paw forward, then the other. Just enough to place his body between Emma and the adults trying to remove her. Not aggressive, not threatening, protective. Silence spread outward like a ripple. Every officer there recognized the stance. That wasn't a dog misbehaving. That was a K9 making a decision. Miles lowered his hand slowly. "Ma'am," he said to Emma's mother, voice careful now, "can you loosen your grip?" Emma's mother blinked. "What?" Miles nodded toward Ranger. "He's reacting to something. Let's just slow down." Reluctantly, Emma's mother released her wrist. Emma rubbed it quietly. Ranger exhaled, a deep, steady breath that sounded almost like relief. Emma looked at Ranger again. "He's lonely," she whispered. Then even softer, "He looks like he's waiting for someone who isn't coming." Daniel Cross felt that sentence hit him like a punch, because that was exactly what Ranger was doing. Waiting for Hayes. Waiting for the impossible. Miles crouched again, keeping distance. "What's your name?" he asked. Emma hesitated, eyes flicking toward Ranger as if she trusted the dog more than the grown-ups. "Emma," she whispered. Ranger's ears twitched, and, inch by inch, Ranger lowered himself into a lying position beside the path, long body stretched, head facing Emma. It was not submission, it was invitation. Emma's mother swallowed hard. "Just sit," she whispered, voice breaking unexpectedly. "But don't touch him." Emma sat slowly on the grass, hands in her lap, breathing shallow. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Ranger shifted closer, careful, controlled, closing the space between them as if solving a puzzle only he could see. Emma leaned slightly back until her shoulder brushed his fur. Ranger's eyes softened, not fully healed, but present. And then Emma said something that changed everything. "My dad used to sit like this," she whispered, "when he was sad." Emma's mother went still, her face drained of color. Miles looked up sharply. "What's your dad's name?" he asked. Emma's mother's voice trembled. "Daniel Hayes." Daniel Cross stopped breathing. Miles's eyes widened. Ranger's head lifted just slightly, like he had been waiting for that name. Emma turned toward Ranger, tears filling her eyes for reasons she didn't fully understand yet. "Did you know my dad?" she whispered. Ranger let out a soft, broken whine, the sound of a dog answering yes. Emma's lip trembled, and she wrapped her arms around Ranger's neck, hugging him like she was afraid he might disappear. "Don't leave," she whispered. "Don't leave me too." Ranger didn't pull away. He leaned in. He stayed. And that was the moment the officers realized. This wasn't a random child approaching a retired K9. This was something else, something deeper, something that would force the department to make a choice they had never made before. Because Ranger wasn't just reacting, he was recognizing. The name didn't echo. It didn't need to. Daniel Hayes. The moment Emma's mother spoke it, the park seemed to shrink around Ranger, as if the world had folded inward. His ears continuaram de onde vi para o chat perfeito, continuando exatamente de onde parei, sem pular nada, mantendo o tom profundo e cinematográfico. The park seemed to shrink around Ranger, as if the world had folded inward. His ears twitched once. His breathing changed. Not faster, slower, measured, controlled. The way it had always changed right before a search began. Daniel Cross noticed it immediately. Ranger wasn't reacting emotionally. He was remembering. The scent of Emma, the sound of her voice, the shape of her grief. All of it matched something burned deep into Ranger's mind. 6 months earlier, a cold night, rain soaking into asphalt, red and blue lights reflecting off glass and metal. Officer Daniel Hayes had been kneeling beside a wrecked vehicle, flashlight shaking slightly in his hand, as he spoke calmly into his radio. "Victims not responding," Hayes had said. "Child in the back seat, female, about 6. Ranger had been beside him then, alert, focused, working. The girl in the car had been crying, softly, just like Emma. Ranger hadn't understood words like death or father or goodbye, but he understood patterns, and Emma fit one that terrified him. Back in the present, Ranger lifted his head fully now. His body was still pressed against Emma, but his eyes scanned the park again, not casually, strategically. Miles followed his gaze. "Daniel," Miles said quietly, "Ranger's not just bonding, he's tracking." Daniel Cross felt his stomach tighten. "Tracking what?" "Someone," Miles replied. "Or something." Emma's mother froze. "What do you mean?" Before Miles could answer, Emma spoke again. "He doesn't like the man by the trees." Everyone turned. Near the far fence line, partially hidden by a row of bare-branched trees, stood a man pretending very hard not to watch. Too still, too quiet, phone angled just enough to look busy. Ranger stood. This time, there was no hesitation. "Ma'am," Miles said firmly, "take your daughter and move behind me." Emma clung to Ranger's fur for one last second before her mother gently pulled her back. Emma's fingers slid free reluctantly. "I don't want him to go," she whispered. Ranger didn't look back. He was locked in. The man near the trees shifted his weight, just once, and that was enough. Ranger growled low in his chest, not loud, not wild, a warning reserved for moments when danger was real and close. Miles keyed his radio. "Possible suspect. Park perimeter. K9 alert." Daniel Cross reached for Ranger's leash out of instinct. Ranger didn't pull. He waited, like he was asking permission. Daniel hesitated only a second, then released it. "Go," he whispered. Ranger moved, fast, silent. Years of training snapped back into place as if they had never left. His stride lengthened, his body lowered, his focus narrowed to a single point. The man noticed. He turned and ran. Emma screamed. "Ranger!" Her voice cracked through the air. Ranger heard it. And still he didn't slow, because protection sometimes means running toward danger. The man didn't scream, didn't shout, didn't call for help. He ran like someone who knew exactly how much time he had before being caught. That scared Miles more than panic ever could. "Cut him off," Miles shouted to the responding units. Ranger closed the distance quickly. The man glanced back once, and that moment of hesitation cost him everything. Ranger barked. One sharp, commanding bark that sliced through the park. The man stumbled. Ranger struck, not with fury, but precision. A clean takedown, controlled force. Enough to put the man on the ground and keep him there. Officers swarmed in seconds. Handcuffs snapped shut. The man said nothing, didn't protest, didn't ask why. He stared at Ranger like he had expected this ending all along. Ranger didn't linger. The moment the man was restrained, Ranger turned and ran back, straight to Emma. Emma dropped to her knees as Ranger slid to a stop in front of her. She threw her arms around his neck, sobbing now, tears soaking into his fur. "You came back," she cried. "You didn't leave." Ranger pressed his body against hers, grounding her, steady as stone. Daniel Cross knelt beside them, breath ragged. "You did it," he whispered to Ranger. "You saved her." Ranger didn't react to praise. He only looked at Emma. At the station later, the truth began to unravel. The man had been watching Emma for weeks. Her building, her routine, her grief. He had spoken to her when adults weren't looking. Small comments. Quiet threats disguised as concern. And Emma, like many children, had stayed silent because she believed no one would listen, except the dog. In a small interview room, Emma sat swinging her legs slightly. Ranger lay at her feet, chin resting near her shoes. An officer asked gently, "Emma, why didn't you tell anyone about the man?" Emma stared at the floor. "He said dogs remember," she whispered. "He said the police dog would know." Ranger lifted his head. Miles felt a chill crawl up his spine. Emma continued, voice trembling. "He said if I talked, they'd take the dog away, and then no one would stay." Silence swallowed the room. Ranger let out a soft whine. Not fear, recognition. Miles leaned back slowly. "He threatened her with loss," Miles said quietly. "That's why Ranger reacted so strongly. He sensed it." Daniel Cross nodded. Ranger already lost his handler. Emma lost her father. Same wound, different species. That night, Emma couldn't sleep. She lay staring at the ceiling, heart racing every time a car passed outside. Her mother sat beside her, exhausted. "I'm scared," Emma whispered. Before her mother could answer, Ranger stood and entered the room, lying down beside the bed without being told. Emma reached down, touching his head. "You won't leave me, right?" Ranger didn't move. He stayed, and in that quiet moment, everyone understood something terrifying and beautiful at once. Ranger hadn't just found Emma. Emma had found Ranger, and now separating them would cause more damage than anyone was prepared to face. The danger was over. That's what the reports said. The suspect was in custody. Charges were filed. Statements were taken. Patrol cars returned to routine. The park reopened the next morning like nothing extraordinary had happened. But for Emma, and continued chat, continuando exatamente de onde parei, sem reiniciar, sem resumir, mantendo o mesmo ritmo profundo. But for Emma and for Ranger, the danger didn't disappear with the paperwork. It lingered. It lived in the quiet moments after the adrenaline faded, when the world expected them to return to normal as if nothing fundamental had shifted. Emma didn't speak much on the drive home from the station. She sat in the back seat, knees pulled to her chest, fingers wrapped tightly in Ranger's fur as he lay beside her, head resting protectively against her leg. Every red light made her tense. Every shadow outside the window made her glance up quickly. Ranger noticed all of it. He adjusted his position subtly, pressing closer, his breathing slow and deliberate, regulating her fear the way he once regulated crowds and suspects. Emma's mother watched them through the rearview mirror, heart breaking in 1,000 quiet ways. She had failed to see the danger, and yet somehow her daughter had been saved by the very dog the department had quietly written off. The first phone call came the next morning. It was polite, professional, and heavy with implication. "Mrs. Hayes, we need to discuss Ranger's involvement yesterday." Her stomach dropped. "Is he in trouble?" she asked immediately. A pause. "No," the voice replied, "but there are concerns." By noon, Emma's apartment felt crowded. 2 officers, a department counselor, someone from administrative services, all seated politely on the couch while Ranger lay between Emma and the door, unmoving. Emma's mother noticed how no one tried to pet him. They all felt it. This dog was not here for comfort. He was here for protection. The counselor spoke first. "Emma has experienced significant trauma," she said gently. "Losing a parent at her age can lead to anxiety, attachment behaviors, hypervigilance." Emma's mother nodded. "I know." The counselor glanced at Ranger. "Sometimes children transfer that attachment onto animals." Ranger's ears flicked. Emma sat up straighter. "He's not my toy," she said quietly. "He's my family." No one corrected her. One officer cleared his throat. "The issue isn't Emma, it's Ranger." Emma's fingers tightened in Ranger's fur. "He's retired," the officer continued. "He's no longer an active K9. His engagement yesterday, while heroic, raises concerns about behavioral boundaries." Emma's mother's voice hardened. "He stopped a crime." "Yes," the officer said, "but he did so without authorization." Ranger lifted his head, his gaze locked on the speaker. Not aggressive, unblinking, like he was measuring him. The room grew tense. Daniel Cross shifted uncomfortably. "With respect," he said, "Ranger acted exactly as he was trained to act. He assessed a threat and neutralized it." "But he chose a civilian," the administrator replied. "That's the issue." Emma looked up. "He chose me." Silence fell. The administrator sighed. "We're not saying he did something wrong. We're saying he might not be suitable for unsupervised civilian placement." Emma's chest tightened. "What does that mean?" she asked. "It means," the administrator said carefully, "Ranger may need to be relocated, perhaps to a specialized facility. Somewhere he can be monitored." Emma's face drained of color. "No," she whispered. Ranger stood, slowly. He stepped forward, placing his body between Emma and the adults again. This time, the gesture wasn't instinct. It was deliberate. The counselor held up her hands. "Easy, nobody is taking him today." Emma's mother stood. "You're talking about taking away the one thing that's helped my daughter feel safe." "We're talking about preventing dependency," the administrator replied. Emma's voice shook, but she didn't back down. "I already lost my dad," she said. "I'm not losing him too." Ranger pressed his shoulder against her leg. After the meeting ended, Emma's mother collapsed onto the couch, hands shaking. "They're going to try," she whispered. "I can feel it." Ranger sat in front of her, eyes steady. He didn't understand bureaucracy, but he understood threat. And this felt like one. That night, Emma had her first nightmare since the arrest. She screamed once, sharp, terrified. Before her mother reached the doorway, Ranger was already there, standing on his hind legs, paws on the bed, nudging Emma awake gently. "It's okay," Emma sobbed, clinging to his neck. "It's okay. You're here." Ranger stayed pressed against her until her breathing slowed. He didn't leave the room afterward. He lay across the doorway instead, guarding. The following days brought more calls, more meetings, more words like evaluation, risk, liability. Each one chipped away at Emma's sense of safety. She stopped drawing again, stopped smiling. Ranger noticed. He stayed closer. Miles visited one evening after his shift. He crouched beside Ranger, scratching behind his ears softly. "You did the right thing," he murmured. "But the system doesn't always like the right thing." He looked at Emma. "Are you scared they'll take him?" Emma nodded. Ranger's tail thumped once. Miles sighed. "Then we're going to need to fight." Because the truth was becoming impossible to ignore. Ranger hadn't just saved Emma from a criminal. He had become the barrier between her and a second loss. And now, the people sworn to protect them both had to decide which rules mattered more. The letter arrived on a Thursday morning. Plain envelope. Official seal. Emma's mother stared at it for a long moment before opening it, already knowing what it would say. Ranger sat at her feet, watching her hands, sensing the shift in her breathing before she even spoke. When she read the words, her knees gave out. Formal behavioral review. Mandatory relocation. Pending evaluation. Effective immediately. Emma was coloring at the table when the paper slipped from her mother's fingers. "Mom?" she asked softly. "What is it?" Her mother tried to smile, failed. "They want to take Ranger for tests." Emma's crayon snapped in half. "No." Ranger stood, slowly. His ears lifted, his posture alert, not aggressive, but ready. The same stance he used before doors were kicked in, before commands were shouted, before danger revealed itself. Emma slid out of her chair and wrapped both arms around his neck. "They can't," she whispered into his fur. "They can't." The evaluation was scheduled for Monday. 4 days. 4 days that felt like a countdown. Ranger changed during those days, not in behavior, but in intensity. He shadowed Emma everywhere. Bathroom door, bedroom doorway, kitchen threshold. If Emma moved, Ranger moved. At night, he didn't sleep. He watched. Miles came by Friday evening, his uniform still creased from a long shift. "They're serious," he said quietly. "Admin thinks Ranger's attachment is excessive." Emma's mother's voice trembled. "He saved her." "I know," Miles said, "but from their perspective, that's the problem." Emma listened from the hallway. Ranger pressed against her legs. "What happens if he fails?" she asked. Miles hesitated. "He won't come back." Emma's chest tightened so hard she thought she might stop breathing. Ranger turned his head and licked her wrist once. Slow, grounding. Sunday night was the worst. Emma lay awake, staring at the ceiling, every second ticking louder than the last. Ranger lay beside the bed, chin on his paws, eyes open. "Promise me something," Emma whispered. Ranger lifted his head. "Don't leave without me." Ranger stood and placed his front paws gently on the bed, pressing his forehead to hers. If dogs could make promises, this one would have. The evaluation center was sterile. White walls, cameras, glass partitions. Ranger walked in calmly, leash loose, posture flawless. Emma clutched his fur one last time before an officer gently separated them. "It's just for a little while," her mother whispered. Ranger stopped walking, turned, locked eyes with Emma, and refused to move, not growling, not barking, just planted. The handler tugged gently. Ranger didn't budge. The room went quiet. Emma's breath hitched. "He's trained to obey," one evaluator murmured. Miles shook his head. "He's trained to protect." The tests began. Simulated noises, sudden movements, actors raising voices, a staged argument behind a door. Ranger remained calm. Until Emma cried. It wasn't loud, just a soft, broken sound. Ranger spun instantly, muscles coiled, eyes searching. "She's not part of the test," an evaluator said sharply. But Ranger didn't care. He strained against the leash, whining low, desperate. Emma reached for the glass. "Ranger, it's okay," she sobbed. "I'm here." Ranger sat, but he never looked away from her. The final test was the hardest. An evaluator approached Emma abruptly, voice raised. "Come with me," he said, reaching out. Ranger exploded into motion, not attacking, intercepting. Body between Emma and the hand in a heartbeat, a sharp bark tearing through the room. Every officer froze. Every camera caught it. The evaluator stepped back, heart racing. Miles spoke quietly. "That's the answer." The room erupted in argument. "He's too bonded. He's demonstrating protective obsession. He's reacting to perceived threat." Miles turned to them. So would any good officer. Silence followed. Emma's mother stood shaking. "If you take him," she said, voice breaking, "you'll break her." Emma clung to Ranger, tears soaking his neck. Ranger pressed into her, trembling. Not from fear, from restraint. That night, Emma fell asleep holding Ranger's collar. Miles stayed behind. Admin whispered, debated, argued, and finally someone said the words no one expected. What if he's not a risk? What if he's exactly where he belongs? The room stayed silent longer than anyone expected. Not the awkward kind of silence. The heavy kind. The kind that presses against your chest and makes every breath feel like a choice. Ranger sat beside Emma, unmoving. His back was straight, his head high, eyes steady. He wasn't pleading. He wasn't resisting. He was waiting. Emma's mother watched the faces around the room. Officers, evaluators, administrators, searching for something human behind the policies and procedures. Some wouldn't meet her eyes. Others looked conflicted. One woman near the door wiped at her cheek quickly and pretended it was nothing. Finally, the senior administrator cleared his throat. "We need to adjourn," he said. "This requires review." Emma's heart dropped. "So, he's leaving," she whispered. No one answered. That was answer enough. The ride home was quiet, too quiet. Emma sat in the back seat with Ranger's head resting against her knees, fingers buried in his fur like she was trying to memorize the feeling. Her mother drove with both hands tight on the wheel, blinking back tears she refused to let fall. Ranger noticed everything. The tension, the fear, the smell of loss before it even arrived. When they reached the apartment, Ranger didn't go inside right away. He stood at the doorway, scanning the hall, committing it to memory. Emma noticed. "You think they'll make you leave?" she said softly. Ranger pressed his forehead against her chest. That night, Emma dreamed of her father. He stood in uniform, smiling the way he used to before work. Ranger sat beside him, alert and calm. "Good job, partner," her father said, resting a hand on Ranger's head. Emma woke up crying. Ranger was already there. The call came the next afternoon. Emma's mother put it on speaker without meaning to. "Mrs. Hayes," the administrator said, "after careful consideration, we've reached a preliminary decision." Emma held her breath. "We believe Ranger poses an emotional risk to your daughter." Emma's vision blurred. "And therefore," he continued, "we are prepared to relocate him to a secured retirement facility where—" "No," Emma said. The room froze. "I said no," she repeated, standing. Her voice shook, but she didn't stop. "You didn't see him when I couldn't breathe. You didn't hear the bad man whispering. You didn't see me before Ranger." Silence. Ranger stood at her side, shoulder pressed firmly against her leg. "He's not dangerous," Emma said. "He's the reason I'm still here." Her mother's voice joined hers. "If you take him, we will fight you." A pause, longer this time, then a different voice spoke. "Let me speak." It was the department psychologist. "I've reviewed the footage again," she said calmly, "and I disagree with the conclusion." Everyone stilled. "What we're seeing isn't unhealthy attachment," she continued. "It's trauma-informed protection. Ranger isn't replacing a parent. He's stabilizing a child who lost one." The administrator hesitated. "But policy doesn't raise children," the psychologist replied. "People do." That evening, Miles arrived with coffee and a tired smile. "They're split," he admitted. "Half the department wants him relocated. The other half thinks separating them would do more harm than good." Emma looked up. "What do you think?" Miles glanced at Ranger. "I think," he said quietly, "that dog saved more than one life, and he's still doing it." 3 days passed. No answer. Every knock at the door made Emma flinch. Every siren outside made Ranger rise. On the 4th morning, Emma's mother found Ranger lying in front of the door again, body blocking the exit. "Ranger," she whispered, kneeling beside him. "What are you guarding?" Ranger didn't move, because deep down, he already knew. The final meeting was scheduled for Friday. Emma wore her father's old police patch pinned to her jacket. Ranger walked beside her, steady. Inside the conference room, the senior administrator stood. "This is our final determination," he said. Emma squeezed Ranger's collar. "We will allow Ranger to remain in your custody." Emma gasped. "On one condition." Her heart dropped again. "He will be officially reassigned, not as a K9, but as a therapeutic support companion." The room held its breath. Emma looked down at Ranger. "You get to stay," she whispered. Ranger's tail thumped once. Just once. The paperwork took weeks. The healing took longer. Ranger's reassignment was unlike anything the department had ever done before. There was no ceremony, no press release, no applause. Just a quiet transfer of responsibility, signed forms, and one simple line typed beneath his name. Status: permanent civilian placement, therapeutic support companion. Emma traced those words with her finger when her mother showed her the document. "So he's not a police dog anymore?" she asked softly. Her mother shook her head. "He'll always be one," she said. "He just serves in a different way now." Ranger lay at Emma's feet while they talked, eyes half closed, but alert. He didn't understand titles. He didn't care about badges or ranks. He only knew one thing. He stayed. The neighborhood noticed the change before anyone else did. Emma began walking to the park again, slowly at first. Ranger never pulled the leash, never rushed her. He matched her pace exactly, stopping when she stopped, moving when she moved. When strangers approached, Ranger didn't bark. He stepped slightly forward, positioning himself just enough to remind the world that Emma wasn't alone. People noticed. They always did. "Beautiful dog," someone said one afternoon. Emma smiled politely. "He's a hero." The woman laughed gently, thinking it was just something children said. But Ranger's ears flicked. He knew. At school, Emma brought Ranger for a special visit approved by the administration and the department psychologist. The children gasped when they saw him. His size, his posture, the quiet authority he carried without effort. "This is Ranger," Emma said, standing a little taller than usual. "He used to be a police dog." A boy raised his hand. "Did he catch bad guys?" Emma nodded. "Yes." Another child asked, "Does he still?" Emma smiled and looked down at Ranger. "He stops bad things before they happen." Ranger sat beside her, calm and steady, letting the children approach only when Emma said it was okay. For the first time since her father's death, Emma stood in front of a room full of people without fear, and Ranger stayed. Miles visited often, sometimes in uniform, sometimes not. One afternoon he brought a small box. "Something I thought you should have?" he said, handing it to Emma. Inside was Ranger's old K9 badge, not official anymore, retired. Emma held it carefully, then clipped it onto Ranger's collar. "Is that allowed?" she asked. Miles smiled. Off the record, Ranger didn't react. He didn't need symbols to know who he was. But that night when he lay beside Emma's bed, the badge caught the light softly, a reminder of where he'd been, and where he chose to be. The nightmares didn't vanish completely. Some nights, Emma still woke up shaking, memories clawing their way back. But now, when she reached out, Ranger was there before the fear could settle. He rested his head on her chest, grounding her breathing, anchoring her to the present. "So you don't have to fight anymore," her mother whispered once, watching them from the doorway. Emma nodded. Neither did Ranger. News of the case spread quietly, first among officers, then among families, then beyond. People started writing letters, emails, messages, parents thanking the department for compassion, veterans recognizing Ranger's discipline, therapists asking questions about canine trauma support. The department didn't respond publicly. They didn't have to. The results spoke for themselves. One evening, months later, Emma stood at the edge of the same park where everything had begun. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in soft gold and blue. She knelt and wrapped her arms around Ranger's neck. "You didn't leave me," she whispered. Ranger leaned into her, eyes closing briefly. He had followed orders his entire life. This time, he followed his heart. Time did what time always does. It moved forward. Emma grew, slowly at first, then all at once. The little girl who once flinched at sudden sounds began to laugh again. Real laughter, the kind that comes from the chest, not forced or cautious. She learned how to ride a bike with Ranger, trotting patiently beside her, matching her balance, never letting her fall without being close enough to catch her. She learned how to sleep through the night again. She learned how to trust silence. And Ranger aged. His muzzle turned silver, his steps softened. His jumps became careful calculations instead of reflexes, but his eyes never lost that quiet awareness, the kind that sees what others miss, especially when it came to Emma. Years later, on a cool autumn afternoon, Emma stood in front of her high school for the first time, backpack over her shoulder, nerves buzzing quietly under her skin. Ranger sat beside her, older now, slower, but still steady. "You don't have to come," she said softly, kneeling to his level. Ranger didn't move. He never did when it mattered. Her mother watched them from the porch, heartful in ways she didn't have words for anymore. She remembered the fear, the meetings, the threat of separation, the night she thought she might lose everything her daughter had left. And she remembered the dog who refused to let that happen. Inside the school, a counselor recognized Ranger immediately. "You must be Emma," she said warmly. "We've heard about you and him." Emma smiled. He stayed. The counselor nodded. Some do. That evening, Emma sat on the floor of her room, sorting through old drawings. The early ones were dark, empty, lonely. The newer ones were different. A girl, a dog, always together, always watching. She picked up one drawing and turned to Ranger, who lay near the doorway, chin resting on his paws. "You know," she said quietly, "they almost took you away." Ranger lifted his head. "I'm glad you didn't listen," she whispered. Ranger stood and walked toward her slowly, carefully, resting his forehead against hers like he always did. A promise. Ranger passed peacefully one winter morning. No sirens, no panic, just quiet. Emma lay beside him on the living room floor, arms wrapped around his aging body, tears soaking into his fur. "You can rest now," she whispered. "I'm okay." And Ranger believed her. At the small memorial, Miles stood beside Emma, holding Ranger's old badge in his hand. "He served longer than most," Miles said softly, "and better than many." Emma placed the badge beside Ranger's photo. "He wasn't just a K9, she said. "He was my family." No one argued. Years later, Emma would choose her path, not because of fear, but because of purpose. She would work with children who had lost their sense of safety. She would train therapy dogs. She would tell Ranger's story, not as a miracle, but as proof. Proof that loyalty doesn't end with retirement. Proof that heroes don't stop being heroes when the uniform comes off. And proof that sometimes the bravest thing a dog can do is stay. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who believes in loyalty beyond duty, and subscribe for more powerful K9 stories that remind us what family truly means. Because some heroes don't walk away, they stay.